As artificial intelligence continues to transform the insurance underwriting process and the value chain by boosting efficiency and improving accuracy, it's also creating potential for insurers to further improve productivity and minimize, if not eliminate, human touch points. This according to a new AM Best report that discusses recent industry layoffs and the growing use of AI by insurers. I'm John Weber for AM Best TV, and I'm joined today by AM Best Director Edin Imsirovic, who authored the recent Best commentary. And there's been a lot of headlines lately about the number of layoffs in the insurance industry and also the lack of hiring, but I understand that that's not necessarily AI driven.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me here. So if we're speaking about generative AI, the recent layoffs are not influenced by these advances. And this is simply because generative AI, while extremely promising, is not yet having a material impact on the industry given its infancy. Instead, the layoffs are more likely related to cyclical issues or factors related to employment fluctuations driven by the business cycle. And as we all know, in addition, the industry is facing a number of challenges, right, including macroeconomic and geopolitical headwinds. And there's also the overall uncertainty related to rising loss cost trends stemming from both social and economic inflation, the supply chain issues, natural catastrophes, and so on. So, given this challenging backdrop, I don't think it's surprising that most insurers are consistently looking to achieve operational efficiencies, which may have an impact on the overall employment targets. And so while not directly related to generative AI, many insurers have been turning to technological innovation for quite a while as a way to achieve operational efficiencies and to edge out the competition. And this may be especially true in the less complex lines of business that are more prone to automation, such as personal lines.
Okay, so that being the case, how should we expect AI practices to impact insurance hiring, both in the medium term and the long term?
Yeah, so this is a very tricky and hard question to answer as it depends on so many factors, right? But if the history is any guide, the new technological advances often cause labor disruption sort of in a short run, but eventually fuel employment growth. So, for example, when we started replacing our muscles with machines during the Industrial Revolution, right, this resulted in enormous structural changes. And these took approximately a century to play out in the Western world. But during this time, the vast majority of people who worked in agriculture transitioned to entirely new jobs that sort of never existed or could even be imagined prior to Industrial Revolution, right? So the question is if this time is different, right? So since this is the first time we're starting to augment or replace the human intelligence, right, in areas that have been seen as uniquely human. Adding to this is the sheer speed at which all of this is happening, right? Generative AI has improved exponentially over the last several years. So the speed at which it develops over the coming years may determine the level of the industry disruption. But it's probably fair to say that as AI capabilities start to widen on a road to a more general AI, with generative AI being sort of a small step in that direction, it will extend the possibilities for automation to a much wider set of occupations or use cases. But to what extent this impacts the labor market, I think that remains to be seen.
So what areas might be prime for some of the issues, some of the things being impacted by AI?
So I think for the insurance space, the most immediately relevant applications of generative AI will be in areas of customer service, claims, compliance, as well as general operational efficiencies, as insurers leverage this technology to further reduce the frictional costs, right? And then there are questions in terms of how underwriting, right, and risk selection will be impacted by generative AI, at least in the near term, given the regulatory concerns related to bias and general consumer protection. But having said this, I think generative AI will have interesting applications in many areas of underwriting. For example, generative AI's ability to turn the unstructured data into structured data can provide us with all sorts of insights. In addition, generative AI can accelerate image training models, giving us much better understanding of property risks, for example. Overall, we're seeing a lot of experimentation across the entire value chain. It's probably fair to say that customer service is really one of the bigger early areas of focus, as these chatbots from a few years ago were really never an optimal solution for customer service. But having said this, we're also seeing a lot of insurance companies treading carefully, right? Given some inherent inherent technical limitations that still exist today. And this is why most of the companies that we spoke to still believe that having a human in the loop will be critical in the near term, given the infancy of the technology, as well as some of the regulatory issues related to this technology.
So the report notes that there is the potential for job loss because of AI, but there's also the potential for job growth. How do we square that?
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I mean, at the moment, we see a growing demand for the deep learning engineers, demand for AI researchers, AI chatbot developers, prompt engineers, cybersecurity specialists, even AI ethicists, and so on. Maybe to quantify the level of current demand, the AI job posts on one of these popular sites like Upwork increased 1,000% as of the second quarter of this year compared to last year. So if you combine this with the fact that at the moment, having humans in the loop is critical for so many different tasks, then one may see a scenario where this can have a positive impact on job growth, especially if those that are affected by generative AI are able to transition to more productive roles.
Thanks, Edin.
Thank you.
That's AM Best Director Edin Imsirovic. You can find the full commentary online at ambest.com. For AM Best TV, I'm John Weber.